Top of the morning, everyone. My name is Tshidi and I'm back with another video. And today's video is CV formatting do's and don'ts, or resume formatting do's and don'ts. Some of the things that you should do in a resume and some of the things that you shouldn't do in a CV. If you have any other things that you've heard before in the past that you would like me to actually focus on and to speak about, please don't forget to do that in the comments below. Number one, I think maybe I should start with the do's. One of the best things about a CV that you should focus on is format your CV to fit 1 to 2 pages or even 3 pages max. Try and make sure that you don't have a CV or a resume that's got 10 different pages, because in some cases you'll find that that formatting ends up putting a lot of unnecessary information. So try and keep it as precise and as simple as humanly possible. Number two, be consistent throughout your resume. Now, a lot of people sometimes put together resumes where the information that they've put is not consistent, where the dates overlap. They're not necessarily on the same page, but try and be consistent and throughout the whole resume. Number three, use only standard circular bullet points. Please avoid the square bullet points, avoid the arrow bullet points, avoid so many different things, because what sometimes happens is that when that information gets moved into, whether it's an ATS system or any other application, it changes the format of what it looks like. So that's why we always say just use the circular ones. You'll find that every time you put circular bullet points, even if you were to take those bullet points and copy them into any other document, they stay exactly the same. Nothing changes. It stays consistent and it stays where it's still the same circular bullet points. So try and do that because it will save you from a lot of stress. Use short sentences and bullet points to emphasize your strengths or your weaknesses or whatever area that you might be focusing on. The biggest mistake that some people make is that they write these long paragraphs. Now, from a screening point of view, and when people are looking at your resume, every time you put a resume where it's a long paragraph where somebody has to go read through that, a lot of people lose interest in what they're reading. Secondly, when it actually gets moved into the ATS system or the application tracking system that a lot of companies are using, you'll find that it doesn't pick up some of the specific bullet points that you wanted the system to pick up that shows some of the strengths that you currently have. So that's why we always sometimes say use very short sentences, one line of sentences. Don't write a bullet point where it's that bullet point and then there's 3 pages or 3 lines that it covers on just only that one bullet point. Just make it short and precise and straight to the point. Another thing is organize your content under appropriate headers. Avoid making sure that you've got education in one of the headers and then there's still some courses that you're doing in page 3 where that information is no longer now relevant in that page 3 that you put there. If there's a header that says experience, only experience should be under that. If there's a header that says education, only information about your education should be there. If there's a part that says contact details, only information about your contact details should be there. So avoid putting it everywhere where it doesn't make sense. Match your resume style to your industry. There's people that are coming in the creative industry. Your resume in the creative industry shouldn't be the same as a resume from somebody who's coming into HR. It should try and match the industry that you're applying into and the area that you're applying into. There's nothing more exciting than looking at your resume for somebody who's applying for a marketing space and it actually reflects that they are actually applying for marketing space. Avoid these resumes where the template is just too basic and it doesn't match the industry that you're applying to. However, with that being said, also sometimes be careful in some of these overly creative resumes, because sometimes you'll find that in the systems where people say, I keep on getting rejected even though I've got the right information, sometimes you'll find that the ATS system provides certain information and scores you to the recruiter, and then the recruiter comes in and looks at your score and then declines you because all you had was just pictures, and the ATS system could not actually deduct or get information from your resume that you needed it to actually get. The last thing is proofread your resume and make sure that it's perfect. This is very, very important when it comes to some of the do's. Don't speak about you pay a lot of attention to detail and then there's spelling errors. Don't put about things where it honestly doesn't make sense. So proofread it. After you've read it, give it to somebody else, give it to a friend, ask that friend to actually read through it because that will save you a lot of embarrassment in those interviews. Those are the do's of a resume. Now we then jump into the don'ts of a resume. Those are very, very important. Do not do the following. Number one, use gimmicky or colorful fonts. Remember, once again, different fonts appear very differently depending on what computer the other individual is using. So stop putting all these different colorful fonts that honestly don't make sense. Whatever you're trying to emphasize, you can emphasize in so many different ways, but please stop using all these colorful fonts that do not make sense. The only way I've sometimes advised people about a resume is always think about a resume as a legal document, but this legal document is actually providing information for people to like you. So if you're going to put together a legal document for people to like you, the last thing you want is for them to start seeing green and yellow and this and this and that, and it just doesn't make sense. Because also sometimes some people struggle to read that. And then some of the people won't pay a lot of attention and actually copy and try and paste it in a new document. They're just going to reject you. So try and keep it simple. Black is the only font color that you should always be using in all resumes. Stop using any other color that's not there. Just put black. Don't number two is insert tables or graphs. Do not insert tables or graphs. The reason why you shouldn't do that is because, as I mentioned in the do's of your resume, some of the companies have got ATS systems that reduce the workload for the recruiters. And you now hear a lot of conversations from different people speaking about AI this, AI that, AI this, AI that. What the AI does is that it looks for keywords in your resume. Now, tables and graphs confuse that AI because it's actually taught how to read common language. It's not taught to read tables. So if you're trying to emphasize certain things in tables, AI is going to struggle to actually deduct whatever information that you're getting out of that. So avoid using that. Stop using graphics or adding graphics into the resume. There are so many graphics that normally come into the resumes where you sometimes even get confused because you don't even know what the timeline looks like. Once again, keep it simple and try and keep information in one side. So this is one of the topics that I'll focus on in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks, where it speaks about what is an ATS proof resume. It then speaks about things like this, where we're speaking of graphics, we're speaking about whether you should have a 2-column resume or 1-column resume. My advice is always to stick to 1-column resume, where it's just the top of the information and then the rest of the information is below. Stop avoiding where you've got a column that's got information about your career here and then the information then moves into the second column. It just doesn't end up working perfectly when it comes to an ATS side. Select a resume template or format that's appropriate for your goals and background. So make sure that whatever you select, it needs to be appropriate for what you want to do. Now, I know a lot of times we always say looking for a job is a job. Some people end up thinking, yeah, no, but it shouldn't be that difficult. Yes, I know. However, looking for a job is a job. My advice sometimes is try and make sure that you tailor your resume per job that you apply. Don't take the same resume that you've got that you've used for a banking company and then use that resume to apply for a pharmaceutical, use that same resume to apply for an IT job, use that same resume to apply for a nonprofit. You need to make sure that you stop using some of those things. The other point is try to cram more information than necessary in the resume sections. Some of the times you'll find that people are trying to put everything in one little spot, and then you end up having to reduce the size of the font. And it's just one of those where it's like when somebody looks at it, it's like, what is this guy trying to say? And I have to try by all means to follow every single line and read through every single thing. Stop trying to cram everything in that. We normally say the rule of thumb is 3 to 4 bullet points or 5 bullet points when it comes to your career. Some of the things that you have done are a lot easier for people to actually read through and follow through. Don't put 10, 15 bullet points because they make no sense, where it's just now paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. And by the time somebody goes through that, only for them to realize that you don't have the experience that you're looking for, they already are as confused as anybody else. Now, the other thing is justify your bullets. Keep them aligned to the left. There are resumes that you normally get where the bullet points are all over the place. They're zigzagging. So you've got one bullet point here, the next one is here, the next one is here, the next one is here. And it's just all over the place. Some of it is one bullet point here, then there's another one here, but this bullet point should be below this one. It's just try and justify them onto the left-hand side of the resume. It really, really makes your life a lot easier. And then the last bullet point of the don'ts, do not use all caps. To be honest, every time I see somebody putting anything in all caps, I feel like they're screaming at me. Once again, as I said earlier, if you think about a formal contract, a formal document that you normally have, it needs to be simple, black font, no other funny colors, no funny graphs that don't make sense. Yes, there are areas or industries that require that. Like, for example, if you go into marketing, you can play around with some of these things, but avoid putting things that you yourself know do not make sense. Those are, for me, the do's and the don'ts of a very good resume. So until we meet again in the next video, please don't forget to subscribe. Peace.